Hey there, this is Latina, your future-focused project manager, coming to you again this week. I'm actually making sure my phone doesn't go off. With chapter two or part two, however you want to call it, of the conversation around respectfully unbothered. That is my book that I am discussing that helps you handle difficult coworkers, set boundaries, and stay sane. All right, so this particular week's conversation is going to be all about setting boundaries. Last week was self-awareness, knowing what's going on with you as you go into your workplace and workspaces, either as an employee or business owner. And then this week is all about setting boundaries. So what I'm going to do is I am going to be using some resources that I've researched. And I'll be quoting those sources at least once or twice this week in some of the posts that I'll be doing. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk through a few different scenarios with relation to um, setting boundaries and talk about some real world experiences, some real world examples, and then interact with me in the chat on whether or not these are things that either you can resonate with because you're in it, you've done it, you've overcome it, or you've seen it in your workplace or within your business spaces, uh, wherever you are. Okay. Before I do that, I do want to direct you to the QR code that you probably see on the screen. That QR code will direct you to my website where you can actually pick up my book, Respectfully Unbothered. You can get it on lulu.com in a spiral bound version, or you can get it on amazon.com as the paperback version, not spiral bound. It's a workbook, so it's designed to have you work through scenarios to think about what it is you are bringing to the table and how you would respond in certain situations and what type of boundaries in this case, we're talking about setting boundaries, what type of boundaries you would set for yourself, and hopefully get you to the place where you start doing that so that you're not stressed and burned out. All right. So that is there. I'm going to really quickly share my screen so that I can show you where that is on the site. So give me a couple of seconds to do that. All right. So when you go to that QR code, you'll get to the site. It looks exactly like this. You will see the book, the copy, front and back copy of the book, Respectfully Unbothered. You can click here to get a preview. Gives you a little blurb. You've got your links here to purchase the spiral bound on lulu.com, or you can purchase the paperback version on amazon.com. I also have a calendar. You're going to start seeing, if you haven't already, some posts about that as well. I have a Respectfully Unbothered calendar, which is a 12-month text calendar. It's spiral bound that allows you to have some witty phrases. And like I said last week, my humor is what it is. So that talk about just workplace activities and things in which you might be saying in your head that is funny and witty, but just something to kind of make your day a little brighter throughout the month and throughout the year. So there's that. So with that said, let me stop my share and let's talk. So like I said, I'm going to talk through some scenarios. So my scenarios are set up or designed or split up into a few different categories. I'm going to watch my time. My goal is to be within a 30-minute time frame and not beyond that. So if I get to a point where I think I'm headed towards that, then I will stop. Yeah, but we'll see where this goes. I don't think I can see in my recording what my time is, but yeah, I can. There, we're good. Let me go ahead and set a quick timer right now where I am. And yeah, I'll do it just like that. All right. So let's talk about the first category is psychological and professional cases for boundaries. And the sources that I'm going to be referencing, where I'm going to be pulling like some research data, is there are a couple of Harvard Business Review articles. And like I said, I'll source those or let you know what those are in my posts coming up during the week. And if you have a Harvard Business Review subscription, you can grab those. And there's also one from the American Psychological Association. So those are articles that are related to the topic of setting boundaries that we're going to talk about. So first things first. So there was a survey back in 2023 by the American Psychological Association that talked about that says demonstrating that healthy workplace boundaries are directly linked to lower stress levels, higher job satisfaction, increased productivity, and improved emotional regulation. So setting boundaries is not something that is designed to shut people out or keep you from doing work. It's there to help you, right? So a real world example, if you're a project manager or a manager or even a business owner that's answering emails well into the evening, like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., just to stay ahead, right? I mean, that may work for a while, but after a while, you might get exhausted. You might get irritable in meetings because you're not taking that time away from work. You're always on, even into the evening. So that could lead to basically you making mistakes or just being burned out, right? So setting a firm cutoff is going to help you basically improve your performance because you're giving yourself time to disconnect. All right. So that burnout mentality isn't a badge of honor. If you're starting to feel burned out, that's a warning sign. All right. So there's that. Then another research from Harvard Business Review highlights that employees who set and communicate clear boundaries are actually perceived as more confident, competent, and confident than those who do not. So there's a perception of competence and confidence if you set and communicate clear boundaries. So an example that last minute request that you get via email, you may go, oh yeah, I got it. And then you start scrambling to get it done versus the person who says, you know what, I see what you're looking for. I can finish this by this coming Thursday at this time based on what I have to do. So rather than you jumping, you're actually contemplating and you're contemplating what you can do and you're by when, all right? And you're doing everything you can to stick to that. All right, so you're setting a boundary. Now think about it. If you know people at your place of employment that do that, do you perceive them as less competent or less confident because they're quickly saying yes? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, this is research. I mean, some research you can agree with, some you don't have to. But there is a perception of that person who always says yes versus that person who's going to give you a clear boundary. There's probably a certain way that you look at that person. All right. How do you see yourself if you are one of these people? Okay. So just keeping that in mind, setting clear boundaries, clear limits, it doesn't signal laziness. You're setting a boundary. You're saying, you know what, I can do this by Thursday based on what I have to do. All right. And oh, let me say this too. You're not, in setting that boundary, you're not explaining why. It's like, I have to go do this. I have to go get my hair. I have an appointment here. I have a doctor's appointment. Oh, and then we have this meeting. I'm going to say it this way. Nobody cares. Okay. I'm going to say like all that detail of all of you like pinpointing all the different things you got to do to get to the Thursday deadline. That isn't necessary information. All you need to say, you've already computed that in your head and you know that Thursday is your open day to get that done. It's going to take you 2 hours to get it done. So just say, I can do that by Thursday, by this time, end of business Thursday. It does that work for you? And then if it doesn't, then you all can compromise on what to do. And then I may get down a little bit further into some other things you can do along with that, if that boundary doesn't work. Okay. So moving on, sustainable leadership. Boundaries are classified as strategic clarity rather than barriers, and they're essential. They're essential for long-term career sustainability and prevention of burnout. So an example here is, and I've seen this, having worked in an environment where I was a project manager, I had some really great consultants who did excellent work. They were high-performing employees, but they were always available. Always available. Every time that there was something that needed to be done, they were right there. And I didn't notice that then, but now having written this book and really looked at this, that those individuals did suddenly quit. And there was no real notice. Like they, other than their like maybe 2-week notice, some people didn't give a 2-week notice. So that person who was that high performer that was always available, that we were struggling to get other people involved, right? So what would have happened if that person just set the boundary, or what would have happened if there was some forethought even within the department? Because setting boundaries is not just for the individuals, it's also for the organization. if you're seeing your employees that are always on, I mean, that looks good for your bottom line. But ultimately, when those high performers, those great employees quit and go somewhere else, then you're struggling. And sometimes people don't see that until it's too late. Okay. So boundaries, they actually can help extend a person's success, extend a person's longevity within a company because they're not always on. They actually have set a boundary. You've given room for that boundary to be set. And that's a deeper conversation, really, because again, if you've got deadlines and things that need to be done in certain periods of time, there's a balance there, but the balance is necessary. All right. Let me know in the chat what you think about that, because that is a deeper conversation. I can almost talk just about that, because that speaks to a culture within an organization or within a company that doesn't allow for the ability for someone to not always be on, right? So that's a whole nother story. All right, so let's keep going. Well, I just kind of led to my next point, combating an always on culture. All right. There's a Time Magazine article that suggests that boundary setting is the most effective way to reduce burnout in modern, high connected work environments. So again, that always on culture, that manager that's sending Slack messages or Teams messages at midnight. And then that one employee who responds instantly every time. It's like, okay, and another response during business hours. So over time, the always on employee is going to potentially get drained or even resentful. And that person who doesn't, I'm one of those people who I try my best not to answer or send those types of messages well into the wee hours of the morning, right? And in some instances, I don't know if that you can do this. In some instances, you may be able to schedule certain messages to not come out. You may be, I mean, for whatever reason, you may be sending it at night, but you don't have to send it at night. Okay. So a lot of times, if you're that person that's always responding to that midnight message, why? Availability doesn't always equal value, right? Responding to that message doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to necessarily lead you to maybe a promotion of some sort. But what it will absolutely do over time is burn you out. So combating that always on culture starts with the individual first of all, the individual not sending the message at that time, but then the individual who sees it not responding to it right at that moment. Okay, so now let's get into some the guilt trip and the cost of availability, kind of understanding that. That helpful yes, the myth of the helpful yes. So many professionals fear, and you can let me know in the chat if this is you fear that saying no makes you appear difficult or unhelpful. But no really is a complete sentence. I know that's super cliche, but it really is. So you may say yes to covering a colleague one time, and that's fine. But if it starts to become repetitive, you can say no. You can say, I really don't have the ability I don't have the bandwidth right now to do that. And that may feel difficult because you said yes once, you feel like you have to say yes all the time. So you just have to, again, gauge that. You have to learn the art of saying no. You almost have to take it to the point where you say no in a mirror to see how it feels to you. Because a lot of times people don't say no at work. Very few people will say no. They always say yes. And you don't have to, okay? Then there's the cost of the constant agreeability. A lack of boundaries is described as a fast track to burnout, leading to bitterness and blurred role expectations. So again, a real world example, if you never push back on anything, particularly when you feel like you're justified to do so, like if you're being constantly piled on and you really are not able to get things done at certain times and you are having to spend those late nights, not pushing back can lead to bitterness. You might be praised, oh, they're so easy to work with, but you in the midst of that, you're feeling burned out. And then don't let it be a situation where you get passed over for promotion, because maybe you're not pushing back in the area that you're in, and maybe you're not pushing in or leaning in to the potential of getting that next promotion. Leadership thinks you're comfortable where you are. You're always, agreeable, always doing the things. So they think you're agreeable to be right there. Okay. That can erode your leverage if you are always that agreeable, always that person to never push back. Okay. The danger of becoming a dumping ground. All right. When a professional is known for making it work without limits, their value becomes invisible. And they often end up performing those extra tasks that fall outside of their core responsibilities. You're that person that, oh, they always are able to fix it. Oh, let's push it to such and such because they can fix it. It's outside of your scope of work, but you do it because you have become that, right? People see you that way. So it's about protecting your role and not letting someone else define it. If there is if that happens, maybe if that's happening, can you think a little bit outside of the box? Maybe your role needs to change. Maybe there needs to be a different role for you if that is the thing that always gets pushed to you that is currently outside of your scope. Okay. But again, setting a boundary is knowing what your role is, working within it, and then deciding when you're going to go in and out of it, and having open and transparent conversations about that. Okay. Self-respect as a catalyst for office respect. So setting boundaries signals self-respect. The source that we're talking about, those sources that I mentioned before, illustrate through case studies that respect from others often grows only after a professional begins to respect their own capacity. All right. When you finally say, I can't take on more without prioritization. So you say, you know what, I hear that you're giving me this. You may be speaking to your manager. Let's talk about how we need to prioritize. What do you need next? Right? How can we prioritize? Can we push something to later in order to get this done? A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, that is showing respect for yourself. And when you do that, people will adjust because they see you adjusting. They don't automatically assume, or she can get it done. They don't know. They don't know unless you say something. So self-respect for you is making that adjustment and setting that boundary appropriately, asking for prioritization. I saw that in one instance in my career where one of my coworkers did exactly that. She was being given a lot of responsibility, and she sat back. I remember her saying this to herself. We shared an office space, different cubicles, where she said, I need to find out which one of these things that my manager wants next, because this is too much on my plate. And I'm gonna go ask her that. So she sent an email, put some time on her calendar, and said, what do we need to take off in order to get this done? Or where can we stretch this deadline? And that was profound. That is actually taking on responsibility for your work and making sure that what you put out is quality, right? Because you have too many things on your plate that can affect your quality. Okay, I think we're making good time. Yeah. All right, let's keep it moving. So let's talk about some strategic action steps for setting boundaries, or more strategic action steps. Identifying non-negotiables. Professionals must define their own guardrails, such as personal cutoff times for messages, required focus blocks, and a realistic count of extra tasks they can handle. So blocking off time in the morning for focused work, or in the afternoon for focused work. And for you to get things done, because I don't know about you, because I've been in a situation, you go from one meeting, from another meeting to another meeting to another meeting. All those meetings have action items, right? When are you going to do the actions? So taking the time to block off focused time on your calendar. I started doing that, and I started seeing that on other people's calendars where they don't schedule meetings because that's what that time is for. All right, so that's create that guardrail creates a level of freedom, and it eliminates the friction, because if you've got those meetings back to back to back and you're expected to get the tasks done, that's the way you can handle that. The soft no strategy. This involves keeping the tone warm, but the limits firm. So what does that mean? Saying that I'm at full capacity right now, but I can revisit this next week. Or saying, I'm prioritizing another deadline. Can we discuss how to reprioritize? Kind of similar to what I mentioned earlier. Instead of I can't, instead of the no, just say I'm at capacity this week. I'm at capacity today. Or if it's, again, if you're working with your manager, what should take priority based on what you've given me to this point? And put that onus back on the person making the ask. And then you can meet together to determine what it is you need to do next. All right, that soft no strategy. So that could be your graduation. If you're not the kind of person that can say no, you can use the soft no and use those terms like whether you're at full capacity or you need to prioritize another deadline, you need to reprioritize. That's a good lead in to the full no that you might need to give at some point. All right. And then proactive communication. To avoid resentment, boundaries should be set before they are needed. Stating that you need to unplug at 6 p.m. or you're blocking time for deep work. Again, just saying this, being proactive. I unplug after 6 o'clock. Okay, and sometimes you don't have to explain it. It may be that you unplug after 6 o'clock because you have dinner with your family. That may or may not need to be explained. But saying very specifically, I unplug at this time. Yeah, so just proactive communication. And then deflecting guilt tactics. So if you feel that someone is trying to throw a guilt tactic at you, so you're the only one who can do this, for example. You can say, I understand it's urgent. I get it, but who else can we involve? And if I'm the only one that can do this, where does this take priority over that? All right. So people, and I'll be very frank, I've done that. I've said to a consultant who I know is so good at their job, you are the only one that can fix this. The way you do this is spot on. And that has worked, I'll be honest. But is it right? Not necessarily. All right. So if you hear that, and that's you're that person that it can't be right unless you do it, then you need to push back a little bit, particularly if you have a lot on your plate, and say, I get that it's urgent, but here's where we need to prioritize, or I don't have capacity right now, but I will at this point. Or what else can we prioritize? That's important. Okay. All right, physical practice to reduce the emotional toil. The sources I've read recommend literally practicing. Say, oh, I just said that. I said my own point earlier. Practicing no out loud in front of a mirror until the words stop feeling like a betrayal. Right, just say it in the mirror. No, I can't take that on right now in the mirror. Okay, the first time you're going to feel like that feels weird if you've never done it before. And then that soft no strategy. So that is absolutely a tactic. That is absolutely something that can be helpful to you. All right, my last piece here, and yeah, my last piece is managing communication and consistency. Consistency over suggestions. Boundaries only work if they are enforced consistently. If you make too many exceptions, then the boundary is not even recognized. It's a suggestion, right? It's like how some people take stop signs on the road as suggestions. They're not, okay? They consistently show up on the road, so you should consistently follow them. If you consistently make a boundary strategy, and you're consistent with it, then it no longer is a suggestion. It is actually the thing that people will start to adhere to. All right? So like, for example, checking your email while on vacation, right? You say you're not going to do it, but you respond anyway. So what's going to happen? If you always do that, people are going to always send you email and know that you're going to respond. Oh, she's on vacation, but she typically responds, right? So stop doing that. Okay. This is a great time. It's January. It's the beginning of the year. This is the time as your vacation comes up, you can make that a thing. I'm not going to respond to that email on vacation. Digital boundaries. Professionals are encouraged to set strict rules for things like Slack, email, vacation time to protect their mental focus energy. Notifications are turned off after hours. My phone goes on silent after a certain part of the evening. So I don't hear the notification. So it doesn't strike me to go pick up the phone to get it, right? Protecting your finite asset. Energy is a finite asset, and every yes to a draining task is a no to personal growth and excellence. Okay, so saying no, saying yes to something that you know is draining is going to zap you of the energy that you need for those more important tasks. Okay, so spend that yes wisely. All right, so last thing to wrap up. You can think of boundaries not as walls, but as just doors with locks. And you are the one who holds the key. Having a door doesn't mean that you are trying to shut the world out or shut people out. It just means you're choosing who and what is allowed into your space so that you can maintain the home of your productivity and your peace. All right. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Thank you for listening. And again, engage in the chat. And we'll be talking about setting boundaries all this week. I'll be putting out some posts. Please engage in those as well. And that's a wrap for this particular conversation on this Monday. So I will see you this week in those internet streets. And I will see you soon. This is Latina signing off, your Future Focused Project Manager. See ya.